Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I'm grinning like an idiot. That was quite the intro.
It really was. I was like, as soon as the music started, I was like, oh, now this
This
is
is nice.
fancy. Well, hi, Emma. It is so nice to meet you.
Oh my gosh, it is so nice to meet you. I've been like a huge fan for a long time, so this is a
Oh,
little surreal for me.
oh, yay. Well, thank you. I am a huge fan of this book, so I am so excited to get to chat with you about it today. Thank you so much to everybody who is here with us virtually. This is going to be a good time. So I'm going to start off by introducing myself. I am Rachel Hawkins. I am the New York Times bestselling author of a whole bunch of books. I started out in YA, but probably if you're here, you know me best for the adult thrillers I've been writing since 2021, starting with The Wife Upstairs. And I also write paranormal romance under the name Erin Sterling. So you might know me from that. I like to say, a murder book and a kissing book every year. And hey, that's balance, baby.
That
Um,
is balance, baby. That's amazing.
it's really nice. You get a little bit of both. And I am so, so thrilled to be here interviewing Emma C. Wells, who is the debut author of This Girl's a Killer, which is a Barnes and Noble monthly mystery thriller pick for
That's right.
November and is the most fun. It is such a crazy, fun book. You're absolutely gonna, if
Thank
you've
you
read it
so
yet,
much.
I'm promise. I'm like, it's Christmas is coming up, like holidays. You're gonna be in like airports, stuck in cars, whatever. This is the book you want to read.
I
Uh,
mean, if you want to laugh while reading about serial murder, this is the book for you,
and
I
who
think.
doesn't? Who doesn't? I ask you. So, and Emma is, like I said, a debut author. This is her first book. She loves anti-heroes, dark humor, witty banter, and ride or die friendships. I also love all these things.
Oh, thank you.
Twisty relationships are her kryptonite or catnip, depending on how you look at it. She is the debut author of a Goodreads, She Reads, and Crime Reads most anticipated, and now a USA Today bestselling stabby, good for her revenge thriller, This Girl's a Killer. She is from Louisiana, where the novel is based. So we are representing the SEC as I am coming
There
from
we go.
Alabama. Uh, so, so yeah. Where I'm trying to think where I want to start because like I have so many things like I want to talk about this book without like spoiling anything.
Okay.
So I'm before we even get to the book, I'm gonna start with you.
Okay.
Um, you are a debut author, as I've said, which is extremely exciting.
Yes.
And so can you tell everybody a little bit about that journey? Like what does your debut journey look
Well, this is my first thriller I've ever written. Back a long time ago, I did write some other things that never kind of really went anywhere. So my journey has been not so straightforward.
like?
Been at this for a while. I never thought that this was something that was like pursuable. It's kind of like you grow up, and if you're good at school, then you'll be like a nurse or a teacher where I'm from. And if you're not good
Yeah.
at school, you'll see what else is out there for you. So I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't think of it as like a real job. And probably until my 30s, I started getting serious about it and learned how to do it really through trial and error, like failing upward, like writing really bad stuff, getting feedback.
Exactly.
Okay, why does it suck? Let's make it better. And
Right.
just learning everything I could about publishing. And I got into some contests and mentorship programs with other books, and I had a really good experience. I've met the best people along the way. So I don't regret having this long journey because
Right.
I have all these incredible people in my life now that I wouldn't have had if it had just been like straight shot. Um, and then after that, I don't really remember where the idea came from exactly, but I decided I wanted to write about a female serial killer. And Cordelia kind of like hit me like a lightning bolt. And I worked on her, and believe it or not, it used to be a lot darker than it is now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I started querying it to get a literary agent, and then the pandemic happened, and nobody wanted to work on a dark book. But thankfully, so it was a detour, but my agent is amazing, and she could see what I was trying to do. And that was in early 2020. And same thing, trying to get people to take a chance on a dark book. was kind of a winding road, but it worked out good because I feel like Cordelia is finding her audience right when she's supposed to. So,
Exactly.
you know,
Isn't that funny how that works out? Like,
yeah,
when I wrote one of my witchy rom-coms as Aaron Sterling, I remember being like, nobody's gonna want a witch book. Like nobody's into like
right.
witch rom-coms. And now there's like 50 of
Um,
us, and I'm like,
yes,
oh, we just had to wait for our time, you just never know.
there's so much of it that's like that. That's really out of your hands. That's just like luck and timing and everything having to line up. And like that's both exciting and depressing as an author. Like as somebody that wants to control everything and be like, okay, it's good, let's do this, having to like take a step back, but then also knowing, okay, well, maybe the reason this hasn't happened yet doesn't actually have anything to do with me, you know?
Right, which is hard. It's hard to like internalize that when it's like, but
Yeah.
it came out of my brain. Like it's
Right. And
very
like my
real.
main character, Cordelia, like she is a control freak and type A. And so I can't even imagine. Maybe that was in one of the rewrites. I made her more and more of a control freak because of that, because I couldn't control what was happening.
Exactly. And hey, honestly, if you're going to be a serial killer, you probably should be a control freak. I feel like type A is like,
Exactly. You have to have like so many balls in the air at any moment. You can't let anything drop. And, you know, as we see in this book, once one thing drops, everything starts to drop and you have to scramble to pick up all the pieces before you get
very
caught.
much so. Very much so. And so, since we're talking about the book, can you give people kind of the elevator pitch of the book, as it were, like in case you haven't read yet and you're just curious?
This is funny because normally if I do an event and people ask me to do this, I'm like, I didn't like what? I wrote a book. But it is This Girl's a Killer. This beautiful cover. I love it. If you get the
It's so
paperback,
good.
it's like got this shiny thing, title thing. Um, and it is about Sir Cordelia Black. She is just like other girls. She's like all of us. She wears a lot of hats and fulfills a lot of roles. She is a best friend. She is a godmother to her best friend's daughter. She is a kick butt pharmaceutical sales rep. She is type A to the max. And then on the occasional Friday night, she's also a serial killer of predators who have escaped justice. And she really likes her little nighttime proclivity, her little secret, but she has to like really keep things compartmentalized. She has to keep everything perfect. And it's great until her best friend, the only person that has probably ever like loved her, because she kind of has a little tragic backstory in there. The person she cares about more than anybody else in the world starts, marching with her whole chest out toward a walking red flag and falls into a relationship. And so now Cordelia's got to find out is she going to have to kill this guy because she wants to, but she doesn't know if it's because she just doesn't like him. Is she seeing a monster behind every bush? Or is he really someone who deserves to die? And that's kind of really probably the most I can say without giving away too many spoilers.
I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect. And I know I've seen it described too as like Legally Blonde meets Dexter.
Yes.
And
You know
that
what? There it
is
is. That's what I
that.
normally say.
Yeah, no, but that's no. I want your version. Because
And also, like, if you like to laugh while reading about serial murder, this is the book for you because there's lots of like friendship banter and there's a few dirty jokes and things like that.
yeah, and that was actually a thing that I was going to ask you about next. So that segues perfectly because I love the humor in this book. Like,
Right?
and I know like I try to put a lot of humor into my thrillers as well, simply because I feel like sometimes if I'm going to ask you to go to like really dark places with me, like
Right.
I got to make sure you're having fun on our way. So was that kind of like, I know you mentioned it was darker before, so like why did you want to put that humor in it? What do you think the humor
Well,
does for the story?
I think it had as much humor before, but it was probably a little darker. And then my literary agent so correctly was like, pull back and let people they can imagine some of it. You don't just because you researched it, you don't have to show it to them. Sometimes you do tell and not show. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. I kind of agree with you, but also like as a reader, that's what I'm drawn to. Like I like to read about like an intense, twisty story, but I also like to laugh because I feel like in real life, like when we're faced with difficult decisions, Maybe I have a personality flaw. I don't know, but I'm the person that's like always joking. Like if I could do stand up at my own funeral, that would be like the perfect situation. But it does, I think, let us talk about things that may otherwise be kind of difficult to like just go there for the whole book. But the other thing is, I think it comes quite naturally because at the center of the story is Cordelia and her best friend. Like that's who the book is about. I mean, yeah, she's a serial killer, but the plot is really about these two women and their relationship with each other. And Diane has no clue that Cordelia is a serial killer. So, and you just think about like how you talk to your friends and how you joke and like how you would react if you found out that one of them had a body in their bathtub. Like, you'd freak out, but there would be jokes forever. Like,
Forever. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like that, like sort of like gallows humor, like that's
Yes.
also like very like Southern,
Is
like
it?
I think so. I think like as the people, we tend to be a little dark in that kind of funny way sometimes. Like, and so that also segues into, so the book is set in Louisiana.
Yes.
You're from Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm from Alabama. I've set
Okay.
stuff in Alabama before. And I keep coming back to the South as a setting in my own work just because there's so much to say.
Yeah.
So, good and bad.
Definitely.
Um,
Definitely.
and so I wanted to ask a little bit about that, how like the setting was, is important in the book. Like why Louisiana? Why did you also choose to like reflect your own sort of background experiences?
Oh, there's several reasons. I did play with different settings, but they were all places that I was familiar with in the South. Like for a minute, I was thinking about Jackson, Mississippi.
Mm.
I was thinking about Beaumont, Texas. And recently did an event in Houston, and I told them that, and they thought that was really funny. I don't know why. But I kept coming back to Baton Rouge because that's near where I live. Like I live in Louisiana in the greater area.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it just came down to if I had to like hide a body, this is where I feel like I can get away with it. But not only that,
And skaters, like,
right? And I don't know, like Louisiana is like nowhere else. I feel like you go to any little corner of the state, and I know a lot of states are like this, but it has its own culture and its own way of being, and it's completely different. Like when I was growing up, I went to high school for a little while down in South Louisiana, and then I moved to like kind of the area I'm in now, and it's just like night and day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I wanted to kind of look at where I was and examine that, but also another reason. I felt like, so when I was younger, I moved here when I was like 17 or 18. I lived in another part of Louisiana before that. We actually had a real life serial killer in the area, and it was a lot. It was a lot to be young and like dealing with that, and everybody has a story from that time. So it was kind of nice to create this, like I knew what the city looked like in distress, and it was nice to create this anti-hero of a killer. I'm trying to make sure I say this correctly.
No, I get exactly.
Put it here and kind of explore what that would be like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
I'm trying to say. Not that,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think like, again, the setting really informs the book because it feels so lived in, which helps, I think, too, when the things that happen in thrillers, obviously bad things happen in real life, but thrillers can be very heightened, and I think that when they're really grounded with those like very realistic, very lived in details, that again, it makes the reader be like, okay, well, I'm willing to follow you if you want to take some wild swings now, because like you've shown me, how the world works.
Right.
So
it's easier to gain their trust.
Exactly.
And take them there if they know like where you're driving the car,
Right,
like
right. And I think that it's a little, and too, like I have found writing about the South, people who are not like from this region, like they're not used to seeing it so much in books, like I know when I was first starting on The Wife Upstairs, I was like, well, maybe I'll just set it in like Connecticut. Isn't that where like the bad things happen
It
to the
was
rich
so good.
people?
I can't imagine you putting that anywhere else
Right.
because I feel like I know those women. I was like, yep, I know her. I know her.
Yeah,
I went to
yeah.
school
And
with
that was
her.
what I finally came back to was like, no, we've got rich, dysfunctional people in Alabama too, and I'm going to write about them. So,
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny what you said about gallows humor. It reminded me, like sitting here thinking about it. I didn't realize it was a Southern thing, but
yeah.
way
Well,
back
I think it's a sort of thing.
boy, it makes sense. My grandpa passed away, and my grandma, she got this sweet card from her community that was like, from this club of widows, and it was like, we regret to inform you that you are now eligible to join the widows club of wherever
Yeah.
she lives. And I'm like, that is hilarious. Like, I don't know if they meant it to be funny, but
Funny, but it was, yeah, like we're so sad, but welcome to the club. Yeah,
we
that
regret to
is
inform
like,
you of your membership.
yeah, exactly. That
Bring
is
a baked dish and something.
covered dish. Yeah. Come hang out with the widow
Right.
women. That is so funny. But yeah, that is so, so Southern. So before I turn over to the audience submitted Q&A, which people submitted questions before the event, but if you would like to submit a question in the Q&A module, I'll try to grab some as I can. We've got a lot of pre-submitted questions, so I'm going to get through some of those, but I'll try to grab some from the Q&A module as well. But I kind of want to end on the question that we always end on with this sort of thing. What are you working on now?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about it. It's broken my brain, but I think that means it's going to be really good when I put it back together. It is Practical Magic meets Sharp Objects,
Oh,
and part of it takes place in Alabama.
I
Yeah,
love it. I love it.
yeah. So it's I feel like in This Girl's a Killer, it's about serial killer, but it's also about like found family and friendships. And my next book is about, generational trauma and sisterhood. But also it's funny and there's some wittiness to it and some twistiness to it. I'm really, really excited. I'm
Oh,
working on it right
that's
now.
gonna be amazing. Make them send me one of those. So I'm like,
Don't say things. Don't play with me, Rachel Hawkins.
no. I'm like, are you kidding? That's Practical Magic Made Sharp Objects is like that is a Rachel Hawkins book and a half right there. I gotta read. Over at some of the questions that were submitted now. Um, oh, okay. I love this one. So this is about outlining, which like, do you outline? Are you a pantser or a plotter? For those of you that don't know, pantsing is like flying by the seat of your pants. You don't plot anything out. You just go with the vibes. Whereas obviously plotting is you're going to plot. And so like, how does that work for you? And that is from Joan, who would like to know about that.
Hey, Joan. Thank you for the question. First off, nobody should ever try to imitate my process because I hate my process. It
Hate my
creates more
process
work.
too. My process is such garbage, Emma.
Like, if you ever watch like a police procedural or like Criminal Minds, and they have like the whiteboard and like all the mess on that is my process. But I am a plotter, and the problem is like I have ADHD
Same.
like OG, ADHD, and like for real, if I don't plot it, I don't know where we're going. But I plot so much, and I'm also a chaos gremlin. So sometimes I'm just going to show you a little bit of what's behind the curtain here. Like this is kind of it, but that's only 2 of the notebooks. There's 4 of them, and I have a whiteboard. So it is plotted, but then I have to put it together, and then I overwrite by usually 70,000 words, and I have to carve out the story, and then I plug it into a beat sheet to make sure it's novel shape. So it sucks. Don't if you are looking for a writing process to follow, I send everybody to Jessie Q Sutanto, who wrote Dolly for Aunties, to her Instagram. She has a story. It is magic. She has it dialed in. I'm like, I watch it and I'm like, I want to do that. But
what that's not, yeah. No, they paired us well then because I too am a chaos gremlin, but I have to plot because of that, because yes, ADD. And I didn't plot for like the first like 10 years of my career, really. When I was writing YA, I was much more pantsy. Thrillers meant that I had to plot because I'm always saying like thriller readers were the smartest readers in the game, basically. Like no shade to other genre fans, but
They want to catch you, so
they
you
want
have
to
to
catch
stay
you.
ahead. Stay
Yeah.
ahead. Like it's more than no. I get it because I'm a mood reader and I read everything and I read different books for different reasons. And when I'm
Yep.
reading romance, it is the vibe. I want the feelings. So I'm
Yes.
more forgiving. Although I'm not taking anything away from romance writing.
No, no, of course
Writing a
not.
good romance is very difficult. Because you know where the ship is going. You know, it's going toward an HEA. So
Right.
you have
And you're
to
focusing on that emotional journey
yes.
is like where you're really plugged into. Yeah.
Thriller readers want to catch you. They want to be
Yeah.
like, aha,
Yeah.
you forgot about this clue you dropped. So it is difficult. You have to plot because if not, I will have, oh gosh, open-ended threads that I forgot about. And then I'm going back in my read through and I'm like, what was I doing with
What was I
this?
doing here? Yeah, no. So yeah, I absolutely have to. Although I will say, like, even in my plotting, sometimes still get to be surprised, which
Yes.
is nice. But yeah,
Completely. I had a meeting with my editor right before this because last night I was working on my next book and I finished this whole section and then I was like, son of a
mm.
gun. I was like, this isn't right. I know what I need to do to make like amp up the tension. And like I figured it out and like I have to go back and layer that in. And so I talked to her to make sure it was worth it because I do feel like even if you plot, there is a lot of discovery there where you go back and layer things in as you get to know the story and the characters and
Right.
what you're trying to do. At least
Exactly.
I hope
Exactly.
that's normal. That's how I do it.
That's how I did it too. When I wrote The Heiress, I actually like was supposed to turn in the first draft and I had to email my editor like the day before it was due. And I was like, oh, actually all these flashback scenes that I've written need to be letters now. So I have to rewrite them all because they've got to be first person, it turns out. And she was like, go with God. This is what you do. So yeah,
I think you've proven
worked out.
yourself
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
Like they trust you.
They're
We know it's
like,
going to
she's doing it again. Here she goes.
trust the process. She
I
knows.
trust the process.
She knows.
She keeps saying the process is garbage and yet asking us to trust it, but
Trust
it's
the
true.
garbage.
Trust the garbage. I'm going to make t-shirts that say that, Emma.
I think, you know what? I would wear it. I'm in on it. Trust the garbage.
Trust the garbage, man. That's if you leave this talk with anything, let it be that. Okay, and Michael would like to know how time consuming is completing the research for a novel? Do you have to do a lot of fact checking? So how do you research? How long does it take? Do you research?
So it's been my experience with this book that things that I was naturally researching, like 'cause I'm a big nerd, I'm always reading and all these different things, kind of inspired what I was writing. So I had the information and I had to do a little bit more research anyway, but it wasn't like if I decided I wanted to write like a hard hitting book on something and I had to like dive in, or my friend like that, I just read this really good book called The Specimen and I know there was a lot of research involved in that because it was a particular event that was like historical and she had to get it right and it was like a fictionalized version.
Right.
Whereas mine early on, like I was reading an article about the lack of government oversight in the field of body donation. And I was like, holy moly. So I already knew all about that when I started this book. And then I researched a little bit about like pharmaceutical drugs and like I called people I talked to, but there wasn't a ton of research required in This Girl's a Killer. However, in the next book I'm writing, there was a little bit more, but it's fun stuff. Like I have a hard time. Like I have to be interested in it. I mean, maybe it's the ADD, maybe it's an attention thing. So it never feels like work. Like usually it's an audiobook I'm listening to on a topic or some rabbit hole I've gone down like at night when I'm laying in bed. So I couldn't really tell you how time consuming because I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's funny. That's exactly how I have found it to be. I always tell people that I'm writing about stuff that I was already like dorkily interested in.
Yes.
So like the stuff was already there for the most part because I'm just a magpie of information.
Man, yeah. Writing a book's hard when you're into it. I can't even imagine if you're not interested in the topic. I don't think I'd just as soon pull all my teeth out. Like that would be so difficult.
Seriously, like I literally could not do it if I weren't really, really into it. So yeah, I find that, yeah, research is the fun part because like I'm doing it all, like that's actually sometimes how the books even come about, where suddenly I'm like, oh, that podcast I listened to 3 years ago, and this article I'm reading right now were like combining to make a
So
story.
weird how the magic happens. It's just back there in your brain, and you just come back to it,
Yeah.
and you don't think you have a story there, but then suddenly you do. And then I also just
Yeah.
realized I can only write about things I'm really into, and my book's about a serial killer.
Hey, thriller readers understand, man. Like,
Right.
like, no, we get it.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Abina, I believe it's pronounced Abina. What was the hardest scene to write in This Girl's a Killer? If you can talk vaguely if you need to, or more specifically, depending on the scene.
I'm thinking because, like I said, I'm such an overwriter that I cut a lot out. And I feel like with this book in particular, I cut a whole book off of this book just for pacing.
Mhm.
Like that was the hardest thing for me with like switching from the genres I was trying to write before to thriller was to get that thriller pacing down.
Yeah.
You don't get to meander as much, and I like to meander. And as a reader, I enjoy that. But so I cut a lot away. Probably some of the hardest scenes for me were there were flashback scenes, like when Cordelia
Mhm.
was young, and I like just felt so bad for her. And then I don't know. I think anytime Simon's on the page and she had to like pull back, like it was really hard to create him to make him because he had to be a character that you could understand why Diane is like she's in the picture. He couldn't just be like a cartoonish bad guy and you're like, why are you with him? But
Right.
also to raise to make Cordelia's spidey sense tingle a little bit. So that was kind of difficult to get right.
Yeah, yeah, that it is. That is such a tricky balancing act, and you do so well with it in the book because
Thank
exactly
you.
like that's a really fine, needle to thread, and you really got there. So I love
Thank you so
that
much.
aspect. Let's see. Oh, a lot of people, including Raven, and then I've got a couple of others asking this, do you see a sequel for Cordelia?
Well, I would love to write a sequel to Cordelia. I hope the right people are watching this. I would like to write 2 more Cordelia books, actually,
Oh, I would.
but I think there's at least one more. I know what happens. There's an outline. It's a full-fledged ADHD. My agent was like, I'd like to see the outline, and then it was like 15 pages long, and she's like, holy moly!
Yeah.
So I very very thoroughly know what Cordelia does next, and I would absolutely love to write it for people. And I think that it's even better. That sounds like I'm stroking my own ego. I like the story even more than this because we already know the characters, so we don't have to spend that time. We can get
Right.
right down to it.
Right. I think that, and I think like she would be such a good character for like a series. So I'm just throwing that out there to anyone who's watching or listening. I personally think it would make a really cool series. So,
I, she could just get up to all kinds of stuff,
yeah, like, and we love that kind of thing. I mean, I think about again, like Dexter is the obvious, but also like Chelsea Kane had those books years ago that had Gretchen, who was a female serial killer, way, way darker. But like I could have read about like Gretchen and this like
read that.
twisted, oh yeah, so Chelsea Kane. They were very good. Of course, I can't remember the name of them because I can
I'll
barely
find
read
it.
titles of my own books, much less
Yeah.
titles are like but I love that. Like I love following a killer is a fun thing sometimes in fiction.
It,
So,
you kind of and it gives you more, like you can give them this slow burn character arc that they kind of
mm,
need. I mean, if they're a serial killer, like I feel like change happens slowly there. So it's just
yeah,
fun to see who she turns into.
exactly. Yeah, no, I think it would be amazing. Emily would like to know if you'd previously published anything else. This is your debut novel, but had you ever like done like short stories, articles, anything like that?
You know what? A long time ago, I have kind of a twisty path. I have had some things come out via small press a long time ago that didn't stay out long that I got rights back on and they will never see their light of day. Um, Way back when. So I have written other things and put myself out there. I have written short stories and I don't know, like I've written a lot and I always kind of hit a wall when it came to like, okay, take the next step. But yeah, I've written other stuff. I've had other stuff out there that's not out there anymore. And then short stories and articles and magazines and stuff.
Yeah. So, which is usually, I think, like the case. Like, there's usually like a few things, before
Yeah.
we break through with a
I don't
book.
have anything that I can like point to and be like, hey, you can read, like, go find this if you liked.
Yeah, no, me neither. It's like, do you want to read some like Doctor Who fan fiction from 2007? And like,
Yeah, actually, I do, Rachel
Emma's
Hawkins.
like, I do,
Hawkins.
I do want to
I
read
do want to
that.
read your Doctor Who fan fiction from 2007. Sorry.
Sounds like that, and like some like a really dark short
Just
story
saying.
about like some like an axe murderer, so appropriate for like my college literary magazine. These are the things I have
Oh
written.
my gosh.
So
So this isn't like answering the question, and I don't want to like run out the clock here, but this is like a proud mom moment. So I have to tell you, when my son who is dyslexic and like isn't like he doesn't like to write and things, but he was going to school and he was a little boy, and they had this project where they had to write a story and share it with the class, and he wrote his story and he took it to school, and it was flying killer clowns who eat children. And the next year they do the same project and there's a letter home and it's like, please no scary stories. And I was like, my boy did that. That's because of my child.
that is what a legacy. Like
It's amazing. I love
I
it.
love that. Like
Valedictorian, who did your kid write flying killer clown? Did he get a rule added because of his?
exactly. When you change procedure at the school, like that is power. I love that so much. That's what now he can bring in this book and be like, look, I come by it naturally. Okay. Like
Exactly.
this is who I am. And it's fine. It's amazing, actually. Okay, let's see. Who else do we have here? Oh, Jake would like to know, what is your least favorite part of the writing process and how do you push through it?
Writing. I'm joking.
So true, though. It's so true.
I love to daydream the books, plot the books, figure out everything that happens. I love to write the exciting parts. Stitching it together kills, like it's hard. Stitching it together and then going back through and cutting out what's not needed, which isn't a huge part of everybody's process. Some people, like my best friend is a science fiction and fantasy writer, and she's an underwriter, so she has to go back and like flesh it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would love that because I'm the opposite. And I have to go back with a scalpel and find the story I'm trying to tell. And that always makes me curse myself because there are whole sections that I'm like, I remember I wrote this and was like, future me's problem. And that girl was really mean.
That me is so mean to future me all the time.
Yes. Like, figure this out. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the note that's like, this twist doesn't work, so make a new one.
Big twist here.
And yeah. Oh yeah, I've absolutely done big twist here. And then like, and that I will figure that out later. So yeah, no, that is my least favorite part of writing is also the actual writing.
Yeah.
Because I love thinking about it. I love when it's done. I love that's great. And see, I'm also a big time underwriter. Like my first drafts are like 50,000 words. They're really short. And so, but that's because like that is how much I hate I hate drafting though. I actually really like editing because in editing, and I think because it's that same thing, it's like with a first draft, you're so like putting the sand in the sandbox. And so when you move on, when you move on to editing, you're actually building the castle. And so I put as little sand in the sandbox as possible. I'm not enjoying that part.
The second round of edits for me is when I like it because my first round is literally cutting out all the garbage that I put in that I didn't need. But I do think that I have to do that because that's how I figure out who my characters are. I've tried to do it other ways and it takes me just as long because then I'm sitting there like thinking. But yeah that second round of editing for me, which should be the first round, but
same. And I am here to tell you, I am currently editing my 20th book, and I am still going through the
that is amazing.
Is this working? It's like it is what it is. It doesn't go away.
That makes me feel good. I'm glad. I'm glad, and I'm like, oh, you mean like this doesn't get better?
It's truly like this forever.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna just feel like this for my whole career. Okay.
Yeah,
But hey,
yeah,
at least it's
pretty much.
normal.
But the fun thing is that like eventually you just sort of like ease into that and you're like,
Just
oh, this is who
go with
I
it.
am as a writer. Again, the process is garbage, but I trust the garbage.
I love it. Trust the
So
garbage. Trust the garbage.
yeah, we've got
Sorry.
time for a couple more. And again, there are so many questions.
No,
Oh,
I'm so happy. People like wanted
yeah,
to ask
and
questions. That makes me so like thrilled. Thank you guys. I
they are
appreciate
all so excellent.
it.
So we've kind of touched on this, but there's like a couple of variations of this. But like, what is your writing routine? We know like we both have garbage processes. My routine is also garbage, if you would.
There's no
um,
routine.
yeah,
I want there to be a routine, but I kind of okay. So here's the thing. It just depends on if it is an ADHD medication day or not.
Mhm.
And I try, like, I really, as a person in general, not just with writing, struggle with balance. I find that I'm like all in on one thing, and that's not a healthy way to be. So I'm really struggling. I find that if I like don't write first thing in the morning, then I have a hard time getting in and getting my words in, and then I'm
Yeah.
grumpy. But if I come into my office and write first thing in the morning, then that's literally all I do, and I'm grumpy. So I'm really struggling to find my process, but I do try to hit a certain amount of words every day.
Mhm.
But just being completely honest, I'm not an aesthetic writer. I don't have a pretty process. I'll have an 8,000 word day and then an 800 word day,
Mhm.
and then feel like the best writer in the world, and then be like, do I even know how to write? And that's basically it over and over until the book is done. I'm sorry. I don't have
No,
master.
that is
That's
so
not
funny.
happening.
That is like very, very similar to mine. Like I have always said like I'm a feast or famine writer, and again, I think that that might also be ADHD. I mean, I
That
know
is such a
I
better
have
way
it.
of putting it.
Yeah, yeah. But I know that like I have that too, and so like I have noticed like it's that same thing. I'm either yeah 10,000 word day, and everyone's looking at me like, are you insane? Or I'm like, I didn't work on this for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
Oh,
that
you wrote 8,000 words? You must be the fastest writer ever. Well, no, that's like
no,
for 2 weeks, same
yeah,
as
exactly.
everybody
Like
else.
right, like that was
Solid
like yeah,
ones.
that's going to end up being like at least a week's worth of work for that one day, and so yeah, it can be really. And I've tried though, I will say for one book, I tried to not be that way. And I was like, I'm at my desk and I'm doing like 1,500 words a day and every day, like 5 days a week at the same time. And I did that. And I wrote 40,000 words that were wrong. So I had to
Oh,
throw out the whole book and start
because it was
over.
like homework. You were having to force the words, and they were the words for the word's sake and not the
And
story.
not exactly for the story. And so that's when I was like, okay, like I don't necessarily love having days where like my wrists hurt at the end because I was locked in to that degree. But at the
Yeah,
same time, I'm like, that's just what it's going to look like for me.
right.
And I'm tired of fighting.
Yeah, if I try to force it, then it's like all this, like I already am an overwriter, so I do not want more garbage. It'll be like, and then they got dinner, and we'll be describing the dinner, and she had to use the bathroom, and just like all this stuff that nobody needs to know. But I hit my word
Right.
count, so
Yeah, yeah, and I have definitely fallen into that trap where like, well, what? It got 2,000 more words and it's like it did not move the story forward even. It might have actually
uh,
moved it backwards a bit.
no.
Like,
Oh God, that's the worst. Yeah,
yeah.
that just hurts.
It does. It does when you're like, these words are worthless now. What? Let's see. Where am I gonna go? Oh, Gina would like to know, when did your love of reading begin? I always like to talk about being a reader in addition to being a writer.
Reading, I don't remember not reading. We didn't have a lot else to do. When you're like a poor rural kid with one channel, you learn to read. And my mom loved to read, and she was always reading to me and my
Mhm.
sisters. So we all learned to read pretty early on, and then we would just go to the library. I remember getting my library card, and it was way back in the olden days before it was digital, and it had like a metal strip in it.
Yeah.
Um, and it was such a big deal for me, like to get my library card, and you could check out like 2 books the first time, and I put so much thought into it. So I've always loved to read. I think like a lot of it is just, when you have, well, all kids, but then especially, well, I can say only especially, I'm talking about myself, but having ADHD, like that little bit of dissociation where you just immerse yourself and disappear into this other world. I remember when I was really young, I would spend the night with my grandma, and she would literally read from like the encyclopedia. And I just thought it was the best thing ever. I thought she was a genius because she was reading to me from the encyclopedia. It was like the World Book. Remember those? Like,
Oh yeah, the really big ones. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
and then she had this story. I've tried to find it as an adult, and I've been pretty successful. Like, I'll remember books that stood out to me as a kid, and like go on eBay and like try to find them. But I haven't been able to find it. It was called like The Strawberry Goat or something, and I think it was about like a little Dutch girl who had this goat, and she would go pick strawberries, and that was pretty much the gist of it. But I loved it, and it was our routine. We would read it every time we went out there, and those are probably my earliest memories of reading. But I've always loved it.
Yeah,
I don't
same. I
remember
mean,
not liking it.
yeah, that's kind of, I was the same way. Like that was, my whole childhood was reading and being read to. And yeah, my local library like looms very large in my, and even my like childhood librarian, like Miss Green, I've shouted out Miss Green and like
That's amazing.
50,000 things at this point, but she was the first person that like recognized I was a voracious reader and that I was going to read a lot of different things. And there was no kind of like, is Rachel ready for this? Or it was like, okay, you like this, you'll probably like that. And like, we owe a lot to our librarians, with
Very
obviously
much.
like
Yeah.
there's not writers without them. So
That is so true. That is so true. Because I feel like if you love reading that much and you love story that much, because I will say, like, my son who is dyslexic, he doesn't enjoy reading because it's so much more work for
right,
him.
yeah, big time.
But he does love story, like, and he
Mhm.
has a mind for story. So I think if you have that love for story in you, uh, it kind of makes sense when you start creating your own. Whether you do it to get published and be a writer, or if you're just telling stories to like yourself or your kids or whatever, or fan fiction or anything else. I think it boils down to that love of story, reading, and then creating your own.
I absolutely agree. And I think that is the perfect place to wrap this up
Oh,
because we
awesome.
are already like at time, we have been having so much fun.
This has been
Thank,
great.
this has just been the best time. Emma, thank you so much for chatting. Thank you for this wonderful book that, again, if y'all have not gotten it, the holiday season, now is the time. It is the
Great.
Barnes& Noble mystery thriller pick for November. And so you can get it at any Barnes& Noble and on barnesandnoble.com. And you should definitely do that, in my opinion. I'm just saying.
You definitely should. I think you should. I
I
mean,
mean, just,
I
make a good
personally
guess.
think you'll like it, but it's just me.
And me too. I concur. So
Well, thank
two
you so
people
much,
voted for it.
Rachel.
So.
This has been amazing.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, everybody, for coming and for all your questions. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much. See y'all later.
Yes. Yes. Bye.